Hey everybody, welcome back. So today I'm going to be drawing curly hair. And so on the right hand side, I'm going to be doing a more of like a textural drawing of textural hair. And then on the left hand side, it's going to be more like sleeker type hair. So sleeker curls. So I have chapters on here. So if you want to see the sleeker hair, go to that. But we're going to start with the textural hair. So for the textural hair, what you want to start by doing is look at a picture and kind of like start to map out where the curls are and what the texture is in the hair. So, I'm here working from a picture. You can also work from life as always. And if you notice, I'm making kind of like loose, but sort of controlled marks, small marks. And I'm starting to kind of map out where the dark parts of the hair is. So and there's one section where it's really, really dark. And so I'm just sort of using my lines to layer and layer and layer to get those dark marks. In this section where you have darker marks, you don't want to just look like you're filling it in completely with like haphazard marks. You still want to use your line quality in the same sort of general way that you're doing for the other parts of the curly hair. Okay, so that's important as well to consider. So the most important trick to having your hair, and this is for any hair, whether it's this kind of style or any other hairstyle, is having a blend or a mix of sort of like individual strands of hair that's really noticeable, and also groups or layers of hair. So where people usually go wrong with drawing hair is that they try to make everything kind of the same. And it's like line after line after line that looks the same. So that's not what you want to do. In this, what you want to do is look for patterns and actually draw some individual strokes of hair and then kind of like groups of layers of hair, if that makes sense. So let me know in the comments if that makes sense to you. But that's what I'm going to be trying to do throughout this entire drawing is show, some of those individual flyaway wisps of hair that come out of the hairstyle, and also a lot of layers that, because when we look at people's hair, we don't process visually every individual strand, right? That's just not possible for our brains to do that. We're kind of looking at the overall picture sense of what the hairstyle is. So remember, a blend of individual hairs kind of flying away and that wispiness, as well as groups or layers of hair that will give that impression of a hairstyle. The other important thing that you always want to think about whenever you draw any hairstyle is sort of a balance between structural and fluid, right? So when you have hair, there's fluidity to it, but it's also got structure. So you always want to be kind of balancing those out. If you're too fluid, you're going to lack structure, but if it's too structural, it's going to look kind of like boxy, right? So those are some things that you want to kind of balance in this. And the way that you can build that up is again through your layering. So lots of layering in this. This is one of those ones where I kind of sped it up a little bit so it doesn't take like 30 minutes, but it was actually about 30 minutes of drawing just to give you a sense. And a lot of that is just, kind of like going over one area for a long time to try to make it look darker. So with a curly hairstyle, what you want to be doing is sort of experimenting with the length of your line. So you always want to be like kind of using a curly sort of line quality, of course, but sometimes, as you noticed at the very beginning, if you rewind back to the beginning, I was using kind of like shorter, smaller line quality. And then in this section, I'm kind of using more gestural lines. So those are a few things that you can play around with whenever you're drawing curls. And you want to observe, are there specific curls that are kind of popping out here and there? And you can show those, and that'll make it look more realistic too. Okay, so now let's move on to the sleeker hairstyle, which is going to be here on the left-hand side. And in this, what's going to make it look sleeker is having more reflections of light in the hair, right? Because as you know, if you have, hair that's curled with like a curling iron, it usually gets that sleeker look to it. And it looks sleeker or smoother, or whatever you want to call it, because it picks up light more. So those are the two differences between like a more textural hairdo and a sort of like smoothed out hairdo, right? Is that the way that it's picking up the reflections. So think about sort of like why we process hair the way that we do. When we look at hair that has more curls in it, right? Like if it's got if it's been curled at like, if you go to the salon or whatever, right? And someone curls your hair and they're using like a hot iron, you get all those individual smoothed out curls. So that's what I'm trying to show in this one. I'm trying to show those smoothed out curls that are kind of coming around back and forth. Okay, so it's kind of a different effect than the right-hand side, which was more textural. So you'll notice that on this one, my line quality is a bit different than it was on the right-hand side. And I'm trying to show kind of like bigger sort of like groupings of the curls to kind of show how it's sort of like flowing back and forth through, again, sort of maybe a hairstyle that was curled with like a curling iron. So just notice the difference between the right hand side and the left hand side. They are significantly different. And the other really big difference is contrast, right? So your contrast is having sudden changes from dark to light. When you have those sudden changes, it kind of gives an impression of a reflection, right? So the left hand side has more of contrast because I'm kind of going out of my way to show those sudden changes from dark to light. Whereas on the right hand side, I wasn't doing that as much because I was more interested in layering the hairstyle to make it look like that kind of effect. So two different effects, different ways of using your marks, and also different ways of using contrast. If you're not already a subscriber, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and like the video. And also if you can leave a comment, that really helps get it to go out to way more people. So I really appreciate those things. If you're enjoying this video, if you do any of those three things, I will be very happy. Thank you so much. So as we continue, I'm really just going through in the same way, but I'm always looking at a photograph or some kind of reference. When you can, it's great to work from life, like actually from, somebody who's sitting for you or from a self-portrait. Those are great. But in this case, a photograph is definitely sufficient as well. So the other important thing to think about is how the hair kind of sits on or grows out of the scalp, right? So anytime that you have any hairstyle, you're going to have sort of like something happening with the scalp. And you want to make sure that, it depends on the hairstyle, of course, but in this one, it's kind of like flipping up out of the scalp. And you want to just like notice those kinds of things, because what you don't want to have happen, it depends on the hairstyle, of course, but where it kind of like just looks like it's sitting on top. So in this one, it's kind of lifting up and over, and I'm using my line quality to show that, that's happening, right? So these are some of the things that you want to think about whenever you're drawing curly hair, any hairstyle for that matter. And here's just another angle just so you can really see the sense of the line quality and the speed that I'm going at. So these are just some ways to practice. Again, this is one of those things that just practicing a lot is good. When you're using pen, just to remember that it's pretty hard to mess it up because you have so many lines that you're going to be doing. So just kind of have that experimental mindset is always important when you're drawing. So generally when I'm drawing, the last thing that I like to do is just kind of add in a few more like little wispy hairs and flyaways that kind of come around the hair. And thanks again for joining this video. I hope you liked it. I have a few other videos on hair, different hairstyles, wavy, and a few other things I'm going to do. So check those out. And thank you again for joining. Please subscribe, comment, like the video, and I will see you next time.